Hello and welcome to your favorite podcast, Any Color You Like. This is Mahima, your co host, and for today's elevated kitty party, we are diving into some insightful gappe with a very special guest, a fellow Boilermaker with whom Kritvi and I have spent many unforgettable, probably more forgotten nights in Purdue bars. The ever beautiful Adya Roy, famously known as the Desi Career Woman on Instagram, she's like a big didi in American corporate world, known for her priceless advices navigating the maze of building a career abroad. Adya is also a seasoned layoff survivor. She's been through three layoffs at this point to be exact, and somehow keeps coming out of it stronger each time. And on the other hand, our second guest would be our very own Kritvi Methi, a creative strategist, apart from being the love of my life, who was also brave enough to graduate not from one, but two degrees in communication from the best colleges in America. Got a job at Hello Sunshine Production Company, but is somehow sitting in Noida right now. One thing our guests have in common today is, like so many of us, is that they've been chasing this alluring concept, the American dream. It's something we've all been sold as the ultimate success goal, promising stability, opportunities, and a secure future. It has been almost so romanticized at this point, but how attainable is it really? Or does it really exist? With challenges like corporate layoffs, visa hurdles, and a fiercely competitive job market, the dream can start to feel more like a mirage than a reality. So, in today's elevated kitty party of Any Color You Like, we'll explore the realities behind the dreams and uncover what it really takes to navigate the ups and downs of a career in America. And by the end of the episode, I hope you walk away with more colorful, nuanced perspective on this journey, the setbacks, and the strategies that can help make any dream a little more achievable. Hello and welcome back to Any Color You Like. This is Mahima, and today we are joined with a beautiful guest, Adya, who is also known as the Desi Career Woman and has been hustling hard in that American corporate life, but is also a seasoned layoffer at this point with three layoffs under her belt. And on the other side, we have our beautiful co-host Kritvi, who is a creative strategist, graduated with two degrees in communication from America, got a job also, but still sitting in India right now. Good. So, Adya, do you want to share like your story and like your experiences, how you started the Desi Career Women?
So my name is Adya. I obviously all three of us know each other because we went to Purdue. I graduated with a degree in industrial engineering. And I started Desi Career Women during my senior year of college in 2019. So it's been about 5 years now. During the Desi Career Women's 5 year span, we have gone through multiple ups and downs together with my audience, including the fact that I've been laid off now a third time. So it's been an interesting part of my life because I define myself as three things: being Desi, being a career woman. Obviously, I hope nobody can take being a woman from me, and nobody can take being Desi from me, but people keep trying to take my career away from me.
Was so funny.
Good.
I had to unmute myself to say that. That's awesome. Okay, so
Um,
Adya, obviously, jokes aside, being laid off three times is expecting not easy on anyone, and I you do seem much more calmer this time around, I feel, and I kind of want to ask, how did when you got the news this third time, how was it different from the first two times that you found out that you were laid off?
Yeah, I think for me, one, I think bad news desensitizes you. So like, the first time somebody in your family dies, you are devastated, and then the more deaths you see, the more desensitized you get. So same with layoffs. I definitely think the first one devastated me the most. The second, I was like, eh, and the third, I'm like, oh, again, great. So this one I think was different in a lot of ways. I will say there are a lot of countries that protect their employees. America doesn't have enough laws that protect employees. So it's really up to the employer on how they want to treat somebody during a layoff. The third one actually has been the softest blow because I think the company was the most heartful or like least heartless in how they did the layoff. So not only are we getting a decent amount of severance after our official last date, but they actually took a book from like the Europe side, and we are on 60 days of garden leave. So we do get a 60-day warning where we are still on the payroll, still technically working. We can continue looking for jobs elsewhere. And if we stay through the end of those 60 days, we get a severance on the other end of it as well. So it kind of gives you that 2 month buffer on this side, as well as 2 to 3 months of pay on the other side. So it kind of gives you, at least from a financial point of view, it's not something you have to worry about. But it also gives you a decent amount of time, especially for people on visas, because you have that 60 days while you are still employed with somebody else to find something, rather than companies who do like the chop layoff today, then your unemployment timer starts immediately. So it's kind of one of those things that I think the layoffs was easier this time because the company was nicer about
And
it.
you were getting paid big bucks. So let's just
That
put
too.
it that.
No, no. I don't know a single person right now who hasn't heard someone get laid off in last 2 to 3 years
Yeah.
since after COVID. So yeah, so how was the first time when you were going around it? What were you feeling and what were the emotions you were going through?
I think the first time was very much crisis management for me. So I was living in Seattle. I had turned 26 the day prior, which means I could no longer be on my parents' insurance. So there were a lot of different things that I had to think of at the same time, like whose health insurance am I going to be on while I'm unemployed? My green card actually came in the day prior to my first layoff. So it just saved me from having to think about unemployment and like the countdown timer and stuff like that. So a lot of things happened right at the same time where it was just too much to process. I'd also gotten my dog like 2 weeks prior, and she was a puppy and peeing all over the place. So there was just like a lot of crises going on at the same time that had absolutely nothing to do with each other except for me. So a lot of things had to fall in place for me to kind of handle that well. I used my severance to break my lease. I decided to move back home with my parents in Houston so that I could save money while I job hunt. But a lot of people obviously have to think about things like rent and mortgage and, the kids' expenditures and stuff like that, depending on where you are in your life. So there were a lot of other people in my layoff who were in very different scenarios. But for me, I think it was a very stepwise process. Like I have to do these things before I run out of like money. It was also about only a year and a half after I started working. So it was pretty early on in terms of like my savings or like even being able to apply for positions. Most positions were either 0 to 2 years of experience or 2 plus. And I was sitting right in the middle of those where I wasn't enough for either. I was overqualified for one and I was a little underqualified for the other. So it was a tough one. The first layoff was actually the one that logistically hit me the hardest because of like everything that was going on. Right now, there's a lot of things that have aligned decently, including the 60 days and everything. But I also live at home with my parents, don't have to worry about rent. The car is mostly paid for. I don't really have any financial expenses. And now the green card is like all sorted and everything. That F1 mindset is kind of behind me now. So there's a lot more different things. Desi Career Woman, in fact, is much more monetized than it was back then. I think back then I had made maybe $500 in a year. Right now I make like 5 to 6 thousand in a year. So that's something that I know that at least some money will come in at some point in time. It may not be as much as I make in my 9 to 5, but something is coming.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So you were talking about the F1 mindset, right? And I think that that's where we differ because I mean, God bless your stars that you got your green card in that nick of time because I feel like your story may have been much different, if that hadn't happened in that right time. So, wow, kudos to you and whatever luck of universe, like, the universe is kind of behind you. But I think a lot of our listeners, especially, I mean, me included, right? I was an F1 student and when we come to the US and the whole idea of this American dream and what we're trying to talk about in this episode is that it's a very idealistic dream that we have that we are coming to the greatest country in the world, we're going to these great universities, and my god, everyone's going to be rich and famous, and we're all going to be driving fucking Cadillacs in California. That's kind of what we imagine. And not that, at least for me, it wasn't that I thought, oh, I'll just go there and it'll happen. I knew that I'd have to work hard, but if I worked hard, then the equation would be balanced. Like you work hard, you get this. My brother ended up studying 4 years of CS. Right now, he's working in a finance firm. उसने कुछ नहीं कोड किया है कॉलेज के बाद से, but he went to the US studying to study CS because he knew that Tesla में ना 200K की job मिल जाती है. So he also, like, we end up spending all these crores of our parents hard earned money because we have this belief that we will achieve this American dream. And does it actually exist according to you, or what iteration of this American dream exists in from your perspective?
To add on to that, like even if you are on the other side where the grass seems to be greener, my question is like, once you are in it, is it really that like is it really that American dream they sell us, not like for people outside, but once you are in, is that really true, or is it like a bubble?
Yeah. So I think, see, the American dream that I think the world knows about no longer exists today. I think it existed in like the late 90s, early 2000s, where, the H-1B lottery didn't exist. There was just you applied for an H-1B and you got it, right? Because there wasn't such an overflux of immigrants and stuff like that. So it's very interesting because I think people have an outdated idea of what the American dream is. That no longer exists today. Now it's just the American struggle. It is just a pure struggle. And I'll give you an example, even of my green card. Getting this green card was by no means easy. I went to middle school and high school here. We left for about a year and a half. And after coming back, we came here on an L1 visa, L1, and I was on an L2. My parents were on an L1. And the second time we came back, the same thing happened. And we were under this, again, American dream expectation that the company that my dad worked for would apply for our green card. And the green card application, for the most part, most people come through sponsorship via their companies. And unfortunately, they didn't want to. And they were like, it's not worth whatever, they would be investing or whatever. And we waited for a very long time as the situation just kept getting worse and worse, the timelines kept getting worse. And we have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars because we self sponsored our green card through the investment process, the EB-5 version. And so that was not a cheap decision. And also not one that most families are actually capable of taking. Like, I'm really thankful to my parents that they were able to do that. But in all honesty, the day the green card came, it wasn't happiness. It was just, thank God that's over. We weren't actually happy to have the green card. We were like, oh, okay, at least we don't have to contact the lawyers every month to ask them where the status is and whatnot. And with the way immigration has been over the last few years, the presidencies and stuff like that, what was supposed to be a 2-year process ended up taking 9 years even after buying your way in. So that was the question that we were like, okay, we paid this much money for a 2-year process. Again, high price, high reward, or high risk, high reward, whichever way. But it wasn't that much of a high reward. There was a massive weight behind it. And for me, like I grew up in Singapore, there were many times that I was like, I don't know that this is worth it. To me, till date, I have no plans of becoming a US citizen. I'm okay with the green card. I'll work here. But with everything that we've gone through, I don't know that I would give up my Singapore citizenship in order to become a US citizen. That's not something that I see myself doing. So honestly, it is a bubble because if the American dream is becoming a US citizen, I'm not going to go all the way through with the dream.
Yeah.
If in 30 years, I'm in a different country and I'm like, I don't know, living with you in Europe, like I
It's
might do
nice.
that. There's a high chance.
Uh,
It's very likely that that'll happen.
Yeah, I mean, personally, for me, the American bubble busted the day. I mean, I was kind of forced out of the country because I'm one of those people who did not get the H-1B after 3 tries. And I was lucky enough that my company was like, okay, we have a place for you in Europe. And when I was going to Europe, I was very reluctant about it. I was like, oh, language barrier, what do they even do? Because, America is where the money is at, all the investment that has gone into. But I think when I came to Europe, I was like, they've been lying to us all our life. Like, I would not in any like give me any amount of money would want to go back to America to live anymore because I think even if I let like I look at my brother's stress or what Kritvi went through, which you want to get into in a bit. I look at those stresses where my brother who's been there for almost 15 years still in line, and I think for next 17 years through his job he's not like you told your dad parents story. I don't think we have money to like pay for his green card or something. So by the time he get it, the mental stress like, and especially with like how the climate condition is in terms of like political climate conditions are there. I think it's so not safe to raise your babies. I've heard gunshots a lot. So I think 3 years back I was like, oh, like actually American dream does not exist, it's American struggle. And maybe hopefully this podcast is able to help you understand making that decision.
Kids are so obsessed with this idea of going to the US to study. And you're so right, because everyone around me, even though they know that I came back despite having a job, despite XYZ doing everything right and still not and I'm very vocal about it also, and I use Mahima's story as a deterrent to anyone who's going to the US ke bhai usko dekho na, wo Belgium mein masti maar ke aayi hai, why do you want to go there? But this idea is so addictive to people, and it is so difficult, at least in India. Indians are obsessed with their kids going to the US. I don't know if it's a status thing. I don't know if it's a his kid went, so my kid also will go. Even though if you go to London, you probably end up spending the same amount of money. It's not like I'll think like, oh, London bheja, US nahi bheja, garib family hai. Anyone who's studying outside of India for their undergrad is a rich family, so your status is maintained in that sense. So, Adi, do you have thoughts on what is this? Like, I have a thought which is just marketing. I feel like since we were kids, we have been brainwashed with all these High School Musical and, whatever fucking movies and shows and Gossip Girl and everything that we've been watching. Like, I remember during my 12th board exams, I was just addicted to Gossip Girl. And I was like, bus, yehi life है, न्यूयॉर्क की steps पे बैठ के मैं भी champagne पीऊंगी. But that conditioning becomes so deep rooted that anything else, any factual, logical, deterrent to that idea is not good enough for people, and they are willing to go to any and every university, which was someone like me who went to Purdue University to study communications. But in my defense, like I genuinely thought, agar main US ja rahi hu, to all universities are great. Like, you're charging me $40,000 a year, you better be really good. And I realized that that wasn't the case because there were no career fairs for me. There was no, everyone made fun of me, like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, what is communications? And I was like, but I want to study communications. Like, it's not like I'm doing this because of anything else. But anyway, do you have thoughts on why this? Is it an Indian thing according to you, or do you see that most anyone and everyone in and around the world is still addicted to this idea of US जाके पढ़ाई करनी है because ये हो जाएगा?
Again, I think it's a high risk, high reward thing again, because I think US does have crazier higher salaries than most people. And I don't know why, whether it's themselves or their pride in their kids ki nahi ye hamare bete ke sath nahi hoga, ye hamari beti ke sath nahi hoga, hamari beti alag hai. Or like in your case, like Kritvi, like I can totally imagine like somebody in your neighborhood being like, ha wo to communications padhne gayi thi na, tum engineering padhne jao, tum computer science
Right.
padho. Like they will find the exception and be like, my child is the exception. And I think people really, really are desperate in believing in that. But to be fair, I have seen like thousands of like software engineers sitting in Bangalore working for US startups, making very decent salaries with a much lower cost of living. They
Yeah.
get maids, they get drivers, and they have cars that we cannot even dream of affording here. So like I think they are living the better dream. You are an American, you are earning in US dollars, but you are living in Indian rupees. That
Right.
is the real dream to me. Like the hacking of that is the real dream. That's you, exactly. So that's exactly what I think the American dream has changed. Again, a lot of people do the whole remote work and live in Bali thing. I think that's
Yeah.
genius. Like there has to be a new dream, because living here and sitting an hour in traffic and paying $6 for gas in California, that's ridiculous. Like those are things that are not part of the dream that is being sold.
Right.
Then even I think people don't look at percentages. If they are thinking, oh, Kritvi is just the one, or Mahima ki lottery nahi lagi thi, but everyone else I know ki lottery lag gayi thi. I think people need to understand, be like, how many kids go back to their home countries jinki lottery
Yeah.
nahi lagi. There is a lot of shame behind not being successful. We three are like equally vocal about the things that we have done wrong, the things that we would do differently. But I know people that are on like day one CPT programs
Yeah.
that
So
had the
many.
same situation as you, Mahima, where they didn't get the H1B. So they are still willing to stay here, pay thousands of dollars a month for a day one CPT program that will allow them to stay here and continue trying for that H1B until it happens, because I think they cannot face the words ki I'm going back home,
Yeah.
and they're
Yes.
not able to take that rejection as a redirection. And I think that becomes a whole like ego thing, and I don't even know, it's possible that it's, again, we are more surrounded with Indians. I think in Indians and Asians it becomes like a intellect equals success, but a lot of times there's so many other factors that contribute to your success that have nothing to do with your intellect as a human being.
I think it's mostly to do not with your intellect,
Nothing to do with
because
your human being.
even at USC, and this was my redemption degree. I used to always tell my mother that, I went to Purdue. Everyone, my dad used to make fun of me, or going to IIT to study psychology. Who the fuck will give a fuck about you? So I was like, okay, now I'm going back. And now I'm thinking back and I'm like, I'm also a double idiot. Like, once it already happened to me, why the fuck did I want to go back again? Could have gone
I
to
think
university.
let me tell your mindset back then, because I was the one listening to you, and when, like she said, it's because it's redemption degree. The decision she made of going back to America was wrong, because she got into the best school in the world for her major. She's doing a very, not even just like a very liberal arts degree, she's doing a management degree. It was called communication management. She and I had lots of conversation back and forth where she was like, no, I should go to Columbia, but it doesn't have that 1 year. Like there was a lot of like thought that went into her going to America. So and when she went there, I think few months in, I would get a call from her and she'd be like, yeah, I'm here, but I'm not really enjoying it as much as I thought I would enjoy, like my classes and stuff. But we kept all like telling her, no, like this is the best place for it. So she did really work hard. She had like an investment pitch. She got the job she wanted. She was probably the only international student who ended up with a job at Reese with the Spoons Company and Hello Production. And yet, she couldn't go through with it, and she
Yeah.
had to take the choice of coming back. So I don't think you were idiot, Kritvi. I think those were the circumstances not in your hand, which
Yeah,
bring you
nice.
back to American dream.
Exactly. You are fully capable, but I think the system is not
The system is wrong.
encouraging everybody's success. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But more than that, that getting a job is one thing, keeping parking that aside. Chalo, there's a lot of which in itself should be a separate episode, but there's a lot of stuff, like you said, that goes behind getting that job and being able to do that job. I'll never forget the day I got in. I was like, oh my God, like they selected me. I felt so special that I must have done something right. Like I had that, big ego boost that, okay, this school has selected me, then I'm actually good at what I do. That validation
Valid.
checkpoint happened for me. But when I reached there, it was like extremely underwhelming. And no shade to USC. It's a great school. I learned a fair bit. But I shouldn't be saying it in these superlatives right now. I should be saying that, oh my God, it changed my life, right? Like, if
Yeah.
I'm going to the best school in the country for my major in LA, it's not even some remote ass place like Indiana where they don't have the network, HBO, Netflix, everything was a stone's throw away from me. But no company necessarily cared that I was from USC. The only thing that I could have done, which I did end up doing, was if one of my professors could see if they had some sort of pull somewhere. But imagine how many students are as smart as me and how many students are trying to network with those professors. And कितना चार्ट लोगे यार एक प्रोफेसर का it's all they're always like you have to network and that's the only way to get a job, which to a certain point I do agree. But at the same point, if not everyone is networking, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be getting those opportunities, and we should not be feeling so underwhelmed by our degrees. And I think when we were having our first discussions, you mentioned something along those lines that if people that have not graduated university are making the same money as you or are at the same level as you, then what the hell is the point of you working your ass off for all of those 4 years? You could have gone to some community college and just, been where you are, at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Adya, actually? Like you, like what just Kritvi said, like you going to, working with people, you have gone for like, you have done associates or like a 2 degree thing, not even a 4 degree at Purdue. Like, and you went to Purdue for engineering, right? So like one of the best schools in the world for engineering. And you still walking away with that feeling, like that does say something about the system. So
Yeah, I think there are like again, our society in India, especially, I think there's a very big divide in like this job is allotted for somebody with a bachelor's degree. This job requires a master's degree. There is almost a dividing difference where education is the difference between the two. But in the US, there are tons, and that is their version of the American dream, is there are tons of people in white collar jobs who did not have a white collared education. And I think that becomes really confusing and kind of makes you question a lot of things. Because my first job out of college, I was making like 70K in Seattle, which was like well beneath. I think if you make under 50, you were considered under the poverty line. So I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm only making 20,000 more than that.
Yeah.
For somebody who has a top three degree, like I should be doing more than that. But that's why I decided to pivot into project management, and I took it on myself to raise my own salary. But Purdue didn't do that for me. Purdue just very casually kept publishing that industrial engineering makes one of the highest averages, and the average is 110 or the average is 100. But they weren't talking about the whole range of the top to the bottom and
Right.
like where. most people in manufacturing are actually going to end up in that like 60 to 90 range, and they're not going to cross six figures until at least 5 years into their career. Like like Kritvi, you brought up that you didn't have career fairs. I will say Mahima and I were kind of more lucky that way, that Purdue had a really good placement program for engineers.
Yeah.
But I think that was specific to Purdue. So I know tons of people at other schools that will reach out to me consistently, even on my LinkedIn as well as Instagram, and they are telling me that, hey, my school has nothing, has no career fairs, and everything is an online application. And that's just not enough. There are thousands and millions of very B to C grade universities in the US that are not giving their students that. But when you're sitting in a different country, you don't know what you're signing up for, right? You think even in the top 10, maybe you get into the top 10, but anything below the top 10, you really don't know what it's going to be like unless you've known somebody who has gone there, or you are maybe privileged enough to fly here beforehand to check out the school yourself. But even then, I think, Rithi, even if you had flown here, you wouldn't ever have
No
known
idea.
about the career fairs or the resources or anything like that
I
for
wouldn't have
either
even. Yeah.
USC or Purdue. Like I
Correct.
don't
So
think you would have had enough information to make that decision differently.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I think what I'm hearing here is that like in all of our like both of you especially, if, me I left way before, so I'm happy. But with both of you, you guys were told some things which influenced your decisions in terms of like Prithvi, you were like, okay, Purdue was on a good school, let me try at the best school. And in your case, Ada, you graduated from the best school and still like you initially like when your career started, you had like a struggle to actually get into the corporate world. You started, I think, manufacturing,
Yeah.
and then you made your way through three layoffs. What I'm hearing is that in these two case scenarios, you guys are doing what are you told that you should do this and this will happen. You should do this and this will happen. But it's not really in your hands. Like you going through layoffs or you not getting your job in America is not because of something you guys did wrong, but it's more on like the system. And I think which is the most important thing I think whoever is listening to this podcast should walk away with is that, like the problem is not with you. It's not us. Everything is messed up and it's not you which is the problem. I think really resonated with me. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
She said that switch can help process most things logically and less emotionally. And I thought that was a really, really good way. We wrote that down. I was like, wow, this is
Yeah.
actual,
I
actual
really
life. When you did enter the corporate world, right? I know, and I've been following you for a while, so I know you've been very vocal about certain experiences that you've had in all three of your jobs. When you did get into, okay, you've made it, like, you've cracked the code, you've made it into the corporate world. Being a Desi woman, especially in a STEM male dominated industry, how did it look different from what you had imagined, whether in a good way or in a bad way?
So starting off in manufacturing, I think it was super rough. Like I called myself, what I think the word I used was like triple minority. Like being a woman, minority, being a person of color, minority, being an immigrant is the kicker. That's the cherry on the ice cream, right? And you're like, wow, this is terrible. Nobody listens to me. If I try to tell them something, they'll be like, oh, age is the other one, being young. Be like, oh, this process has been going on longer than you've been alive, right? So those are things that I would hear super commonly. I think moving into corporate helped a little bit, at least on one aspect, is that people will think before opening their mouth. And so the first layoff that happened at the startup that I was at, it was actually a very interesting environment for me, being that I used to call myself a triple minority. Like most of the people on my team were Indian, and I think about half women. So I was like, oh, look at that. Like that's nice. I feel like one of you guys, and like the super supportive thing they all did the day I found out about my layoff, I was the only one on my actual team that got affected. And so they all sat on like I don't even remember what platform we used, whether it was Zoom or Teams, whatever, but we sat on a video call until they revoked my access at 5 p.m. Like
Oh,
we just silently sat there. I found out at like 2 p.m. For the next 3 hours, we just chatted normally. And then at 5 p.m., like my laptop shut off. And like they stayed with me till the end. It felt like a hospital bed moment where they were like holding my hand on a hospital bed, like, hey, we're here for you no matter what happens. And so that was super supportive. And it was very weird because I'd only spent 6 months in corporate. So I had a very interesting pivotal moment. Should I go back to manufacturing? Or do I need to continue proving myself in corporate? And I think I stuck with the second one on continuing in corporate, largely because of the difference in atmospheres. And I think it's really important that, like, I say this all the time, like, change the room you're in. If you try, you can try to change people, But sometimes if it's just not working, just go to a different room. So being at Shell Energy was life changing for me because we are a company, I think we have 63 or 70% women. And like a majority of management is actually women as well, which is very interesting because Shell is a super old school, old white male company.
Traditional,
And
yeah.
that's the picture that you have. But the vertical that I got into, I remember talking to the recruiter and she's like, yeah, your boss is a white male, but his boss is a white female. Her boss is a Hispanic female. So I'm like, oh wow, okay, so one dude and then woman and woman. And the top one, the VP, is a minority woman. And by the way, highly educated. She has like 2 degrees in maths and stuff like that. And I was like, this is the kind of person that I would aspire to be. When you can see your future at a company, you're like, I can be her in 10 years. That's what made the difference for me is at Shell, like I never felt weird. My boss and I, we work on the tech project management side. Most of our developers are in India. And there were so many calls where my manager would be like, hey, I want to do this, but like so and so is not cooperating with me. I'm like, मैं कर देती हूँ, 1 minute. And I'll just pick up the call and I'll switch into Hindi. And it was my strength. It was my strength that I spoke in Hindi and the office is in Noida. And I'm like, मुझे हिंदी आती, मैं बोल दूंगी कि ये जल्दी से fix कर देना मेरे लिए, please, thank you भैया. And that's all it took. That's all it took. And my boss was proud of me for speaking a second language, for being an immigrant, for all of those things, rather than the other way around, where in other offices that was all the negatives. So I think changing the room, despite the layoff and everything, like this layoff will break my heart because of the team that I worked with, but the room that I was in was super supportive of me and the value that I brought to the table. And that to me is the other side. The corporate America is evil from the top, but not necessarily from the bottom. On the bottom, we're all struggling together. And the more we can be there for each other, the easier it gets.
Mhm.
So sweet. My mom kicking you out of the podcast. Adya is now my permanent podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh,
They will send
Adya, please go work with Kritvi, okay? पूरे साल में 2 episodes आएंगे. Go
हाँ.
handle your Kritvi Methi, okay?
हाँ.
I actually wanted to get into what happened with Kritvi because you've been mentioning something happened, but because that's also another side of the story where you're like everything is right, we've done everything right, but we still don't get what we want, you know.
Yeah.
And what happened with Kritvi this year has probably one of the biggest heartbreaking story of my life actually, because she's worked really hard. I've seen her 2 years just really, really like inspired all of us with like she's given like one of the biggest highlight moment last year was that she gave an investment pitch. Seeing her work on her dreams, like more than as a best friend, I think it has been a very inspiring and a very, I don't know, like मजा आ जाता था देख के ना मतलब ये like it was like that's the
They
friendship
are
I want now.
they are all so cute. Like I call it Team Kishi. I don't know what I have done in my past life to deserve all of them. When I was giving that investor pitch, 10-20 people from India watching it, like ऐसे रात को 1:30 सब ऐसे अपनी आंखें खोल के like they're just staring at the laptop and मेरे को पता realize भी नहीं हो रहा था because obviously I was on stage so I didn't know they were watching. I come out and they're like, oh my God, Kritvi, you fucking killed it. Like, oh shit, it was so sweet. But
Exactly. You had like all the intellect, you had the support system, you had everything. And I remember this year on your birthday, a day before your birthday, you were supposed to start your job at Hello Sunshine. Like, wow, like crazy. And you did not. And then we just waited that that summer, 2 months of that, just both of us just telling each other, oh, ho jayega, and it not happening. And you're taking your flight to India and you landing in. I remember you telling me, Mahima, I just got my OPT right now when you landed in India. Talk about what was your mindset through that, what were you feeling, and what made you finally not pay that 1600 for expediting you. Like, just, yeah, let's get into that.
no, so like I said, like, I thought that this time my equation is right. Like A plus B will equal to C. And, I'm working hard. I've gone to the best university and I networked even. Like I was bitching about networking, but I think I network very well. Like I'm quite a charmer when it comes to professors and older people. So I think I did everything right in my ability, and I think I made my presence known in every room. Forget changing the room, I made every room my own room only. So it was I was very, very much looking forward to my whole story being completed this time around because even in Purdue, eventually what had happened was I didn't get any internship for the first 2 years. And in my third year, like the only summer we have before we graduate, I think I'd applied to maybe 550 jobs at this point, and I just got one interview randomly. Me and my mom were probably sitting together in my room. We got one interview from a branding agency in New York, Manhattan, and I was like, what the fuck? They took my interview in a day, and in 3 days, I had that job. And I'll never forget Mahima and I screamed, we went to Khana Khazana and we ate two people's worth of Indian buffet. दोनों का पेट खराब, but हम इतने खुश थे उस दिन. So it was a very very surreal moment for me. In Adya's like, I remember Khana Khazana. उसी same gravy में
By
आंटी
the
ने
way, it's not there anymore. It's gone
really
now. Yeah, it's gone.
that good.
Yeah, good for our pate, yeah.
But it was a very surreal moment because at that point I had admitted to myself that I am a failure. I have wasted my dad's money and everyone around me is right. Like, what the fuck am I doing studying communications in and at that age, you think that am I not smart enough to have studied something else? Like, why did I not choose economics? Why did I not choose anything remotely technical? But anyway, I got that job and I started on my birthday. It was extremely special, and I truly do think that that one internship was a watershed moment of my life. The stuff that I learned there helped carry my boat through the next 3 4 years of me working. And so when I went to USC, I was very very confident that this time I'm gonna kill it. This time HBO, Netflix, all will be waiting. Kritvi ma'am has come again. What can we offer her? I'll be fighting for offers, because we used to hear this happening for engineers that, oh, Meta is doing this now, Amazon is doing, I am choosing. So I was in that whole delusional sense of the word that ठीक है मेरे लिए तो हो जाएगा. Anyway, cutting that sob story short, eventually what happened, I got a job. I applied for my, what's it called, authorization, work authorization, which in and of itself I find extremely stupid. I've already paid for 2 years to study here. You've already done all my background check. The country, the degree allows me to work for a year. What the fuck am I applying the authorization for? Like, what? Explain it to me, someone, right? It did not make sense to me. Still, I was like, ठीक है, it's fine. I applied and Maima had told me कि यार 2 3 महीने में आ जाता है. तो I was like, ठीक है, आ जाएगा 2 महीने में, नहीं तो 2.5 महीने में आ जाएगा. I need a, I need a, I need a. And at some point, I was told that only if you pay the $2,000, that's when it will come. Because everyone around me paid that fee, and within 1 week, they had their authorization. And I don't know what happened. Other inside me, some switch just clicked. I was just like, they are not gonna get this $2,000 from me. They have taken $200,000 from me. I will not give this $2,000
It's
extra
it's
fees
the
to
switch
work.
where you processed it logically, not emotionally.
Not
The
emotionally,
same,
absolutely.
the same
Yes,
switch.
it was, it was a very, and everyone around me kept saying, like, Kritvi, what's wrong with you? You can afford it. Just pay it. Just pay it. My dad told me, my friends told me. But at that point, it was a principle thing, and to everyone listening, I had a job. It's not a lie that I'm just, making up कि मेरे को job नहीं मिली, मैं घर आ गई. I had a job. I had a dream job. Hello Sunshine was also one of the only internships whose interview I'd gotten the year before, and it didn't go through, whatever, for whatever reason. So this year I was like, wow, my, again, that circle is getting completed. But at the same time, on that note, they were offering me $16 an hour.
I was gonna say
So
it can't be a dream job at that salary.
so it was
No.
like, okay, so I'm only gonna do this for the name that, oh, she worked with Reese Witherspoon and at Reese Witherspoon's company. But at some point, you step back and you're like, okay, I'm just looking at this thing for the shininess of it all, and अंदर से सब खोखला है. And मेरे को उस खोखलेपन के लिए ना वो $2,000, I could not bring myself to pay it. So I said, fuck it. I went to Vegas, I went to Sequoia, I went to New York, I traveled, and I was like, I'm gonna enjoy these $2,000, have fun, and go home. And to this date, I keep thinking sometimes, यार दे देती तो क्या होता, दे देती तो क्या होता. And then I like it hits me कि कुछ नहीं होता. आप इंडिया आते वापस, उसके बाद भी आप अभी नहीं तो 1 साल बाद आपको वापस आना पड़ता, क्योंकि H1B, like you said, that ratio is not in anyone's favor. So, but yeah, it still pinches because I still the people from Hello Sunshine kept emailing me that, okay, we'll push it for you, we'll push it for you. But another thing was, why the fuck am I applying for internships, bro? I went for a management degree. It felt like an MBA. Like that's what I was applying for. I had the option of going for an MBA. And I was like, everyone does an MBA. Let me do a more niche degree in the same management space. And I thought that after this degree, I'll be able to apply for senior level positions because I have already worked in India for 3-4 years as a senior brand executive. Why the fuck am I applying for internships again? That too $16 internships. And then I should pay these $2,000 to work with like 19, 20, 21 year olds. It did not make sense to me. So when we talk about the American dream, I think there's a lot of exploitation that also happens. It is, I don't know whose fault it is. I don't know, I know a lot of Americans are like, ये हमारे immigrants आके job छीन जाते हैं and everything. And my answer to them always is कि तो अपनी universities को मना करो ना, हमको ना लेके आए यहाँ पे. आपका college चल रहा है क्योंकि हम पैसे
Like,
दे रहे हैं.
honestly, like,
So
yeah, our
imagine
money.
that. So
Yeah.
my whole point is that if I'm not able to get a job there, if I'm not able to get a job that I actually deserve, even after getting a degree at the best school in the best environment, then what is the American dream that I'm chasing? The American dream is just nature, party, and legal ganja. That's it. That's the American
That's
dream.
not even everywhere.
That's not even everywhere.
Yeah, not in
Exactly.
Indiana, mein we had no party, no
Yeah.
ganja, and no nature. We did not have any of those three things. We just had खेती खेत हम हरियाणा चले जाते.
So true.
That was
Uh,
my rant, guys.
USC mein, I think those three are still valid, but
Close
Purdue
with it.
is worthless at
Some
that point. If
voice
those
here
are the
and
only
there.
three.
So yeah.
No, I'm honestly a big believer of what's meant for me will not pass me. So for both of you, if you guys are going through your, not getting the permit in America, Kritvi, or are there for you getting laid off, it's because something else and
ये
better
सब
is.
बोलने की बातें होती है निकल यहाँ से यूरोप में बैठ
यार सच्ची में यार सच्ची में बता रही सुन
She's just
लो.
really loving her life in Europe.
She's just like, I'm a London gal. I was almost, I was in Belgium for 3 years. मैं weekend पे Amsterdam जाती थी. I can't relate with these peasants talking about all this crap. But I I think, because you are the Desi Career Woman, and to end the podcast, I think one of the most important things that we could take from you is that what should someone do in this situation, right? And I think last time when we spoke, you gave us some amazing advice. And I do agree with Mahima that there's so many people in the US just waiting at the edge कि आज मेरा layoff होने वाला है, आज मेरा layoff होने वाला है. Like I had a few friends in Qualcomm. I went to visit them and they were like, yeah, it's really stressful right now. I was like, are you working on a big project? He's like, no, we've been told that in 3 months there are layoffs. So we just believe that we could be laid off. I'm like, अब तुम 3 महीने बस इस mindset में बैठे रहोगे कि मेरा layoff हो सकता है. Like that mental harrowment is like absolutely insane. So to anyone listening who's in corporate America, may be laid off, who at some point in the future or is being laid off right now,
Yeah.
what advice could the Desi Career Woman give to them so that they can navigate this?
So key to getting through any of these hard times, one, it's not you. It's the system or it's the company or whatever it is. There aren't a lot of laws to protect us from these things. Companies can do them really randomly. Companies are actually not even required to give a severance in the US. Because one of my layoffs made
Really?
there was no severance. Yeah, they're not required to. If they do, it's out of the goodness of their heart, and it's like a PR thing that they don't want a bad name, but they're not required to.
I thought it was like a legal
I
thing.
recently learned it as well. Yeah.
Not
My
required.
friend got my friend got laid off from Google. He didn't get money from Google, bro, from Google, like at a CS major. Imagine.
Yeah.
Because there's some
So,
basic
yeah.
it depends company to company. Yeah.
Yeah, it really depends company to company. So, like, from a financial point of view, like, again, if we want to process everything logically, because that is
Yes.
the way to get through it, always have your finances, like emergency funds, at least 6 months or however, like, if you have 90 days of unemployment, let's think of 90 days of emergency funds. Make sure you have enough. Recently, I heard somebody who was brought here on an L1 and got laid off here. They didn't even pay for his flight back. They relocated him from India, but they did not pay for his flight back or his relocation back. So, like, there are awful things that companies can do. So, you have to watch out for your best interest. That is number one from a financial point of view. From a career point of view, there is always something better out there. Like, you just have to look for it and always be on your toes. Exactly. It's kind of sad, but if you accept the truth that, hey, this can happen to me any day, keep applying to companies, keep networking on a casual basis, because the funny thing is the day that it happens, you won't be able to function logically. But if you have spent the last 2 months keeping good contacts in companies that are continuing to grow, startups that recently got funding, etc. You can message them and be like, hey, this just happened to me after you've had 20 conversations with them. If you message someone out of the blue, hey, I just got laid off, I need help, that just comes from a place of desperation rather than strength.
Mhm.
Right? So then you have to like kind of like pivot it. Yeah. So make sure you're coming from a place of strength and not desperation. You are extremely valuable. You are going to be valuable to some company. We just have to find that right company for you. And also on that note, do not settle for less. Do not be a Kritvi. Do not accept $16 an hour in
I
LA.
did not. I did
You
not.
did not. And I'm so proud because I was looking at that $2,000. That's 125 hours
Oh.
that you would have had to work. That's like 3.5 weeks.
Yeah, I
Of
would have just been
free.
living on my dad's money. Then what the fuck would have been the
Exactly.
point?
Then what is the point? Then you might as well be an undergrad again, right?
Yeah,
That's when we were living off of our parents' monies before we
yeah,
finished our first degree, not after we have finished our second one, right? So, like,
right.
understand your value. There is always something out there for you, Mahima. That's from you. So, I think that's part of it is like rejection is redirection. So, if it's not in America, it is somewhere out there. There is something better meant for you. And that's the mindset you have to keep. Don't settle for less. You are worth something, keep your ground, and consider the whole world as your oyster. Like, there are millions of opportunities out there, whether that means you suddenly decide to pivot into like real estate management, or you decide to become like an Airbnb host in Costa Rica, which, by the way, I recently found out Costa Rica is giving permanent residency if you buy one Airbnb there.
Oh,
It's like a 400K minimum or something. So again, if you have earned well for a few years, consider those things. There are some crazy things to do out there, and take the time that you need. Like, I think from an emotional standpoint, logic aside, from an emotional standpoint, take the time that you need so that you can bring your best self to your next job or whatever your next opportunity is.
wow. Last time you called it the hurricane fund. What did you call it?
Hurricane
The
prep.
hurricane
Yes.
prep.
Hurricane
Yeah,
prep. Yeah.
yeah. But
So
that's a good
again,
way
it's
to think
you
about it.
don't
Yeah.
know, you don't know if the hurricane is going to come. You don't know how it's going to affect it, but have your resume ready, have your LinkedIn updated, keep in touch with the people that you think will be able to help you. That's just part of preparing for the worst. Raw wisdom.
And
We'll ask her to.
one last question before I let both of you go. Um, if you both could give advice to your younger selves, okay, before all these things that we are talking today had happened, what would it be?
I
Knowing
recommend
like,
going to America. Go to University of Amsterdam. That would be my advice.
okay,
Yeah.
I think for me, it would be do not take anything for granted, especially when it comes to companies. Same thing happened with my dad's experience where he trusted that they would get their green card and stuff like that. I think as a family now, we have trusted corporations for too long. Corporations are ultimately looking out for themselves. So we have to trust ourselves. We need to do what we need to do to make our life move forward. They are not going to come and, hi, here's a promotion for you. No, I need to fight for that promotion. And
Yes.
this have to go play golf. You have to go do a million things to get that promotion. It does not come to you. You have to make it happen for yourself. So, like, that is the thing that I think I didn't know all of those things when I was younger. I always thought ki if I work hard and I show up every day and I'm not cussing out my boss, that I'll get promoted one day. And that's not the way it is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I
Yeah.
think what advice I would give is that, like Adya's already covered it, that it's the world is your oyster and America is nothing and no one to decide your worth. And the way we perceive things can be very different from how they actually are. So keep your expectations in check and don't attach so much of your self-worth and value to all these external things, whether it be a country, a job, a university, or some asshole telling you why you're studying communications at an engineering school. Sorry, Papa, I did not call you an asshole, but everyone else in Purdue.
There were multiple people saying that, don't
There are
worry.
multiple- I
Ouch. I
think,
think
yeah, I think detaching that value of yourself and that self-worth is the trick. But
Yeah.
yeah, wonderful.
I, and adding to that, since I've also gone through the whole
Yeah, we
thing, I
forgot
would,
about my mom.
yeah, guys, please.
It's very
uh,
Gemini of us. So sorry. Our personalities took up the entire room.
My mom has played
like,
her role.
I am the one who like had a very sad story as well where like I had to leave the country, but that's where I'm gonna give my tip, which I've already said it. What is yours will not pass you. You have to fight for it. You really have to go and fight for it. You have to detach yourself from it. But what's yours will come to you, and I think, yeah, just like a little bit of a sprinkle on the top with that.
No, just because my
I am a really firm believer of that, bro. Like, it's like, even if right now I am like struggling and whatever in London, it's not all like fun and stuff.
you're
I think
studying in London, Mahima. Shut
yeah,
up.
that's what I tell myself.
Yeah,
I would rather be broke and I would rather be struggling in London than any other country in the city in
yeah,
the world.
exactly.
So honestly, no, yeah.
Okay, everyone follow the Desi Career Woman on Instagram. Do you have a YouTube or anything, or is it only Instagram?
And LinkedIn.
And
Starting off
LinkedIn?
my LinkedIn.
Because I think you are one of the only influencers who I feel actually makes valuable content. Like it's not just bakchodi all the time. It's not just like ye cream laga lo, ye kar lo, ye kharid lo. It's like she has very unique ways of, showing her journey. And forget all of that. What I love is her honesty and transparency. And whether it's about your salary, whether it's about your layoffs, whether it's anything, it doesn't feel like you are faking anything on there. You are very like, it's as it is. This is my authentic life, and I think that's what makes your audience relate to you so much. So kudos. Please be our social media manager, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Delegate some reels to you. You be the face of any color you like. I have no problem.
No problem at all,
This
yeah.
feels like a recruiting show, लेकिन नकली इंटरव्यू था लेकिन like कुछ और हो गया.
अभी तो स्पेन से वापस आते को यही काम पे लगाऊंगी मैं. जॉब है नहीं, चिल कर एक दो
Job तो
महीने
है नहीं,
पैसे
exactly, might as
पैसे
well.
भी मिल रहा है, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful to
Nepotism?
have you, Adya. Huh? Say that again?
Nepotism, and then I'll grow the annual revenue. The same
There we go.
thing.
क्योंकि अभी तक हम 500 रुपए पे भी नहीं है, ठीक है? $500.
Honestly, I think I should have said this in the introduction, but when we were in college and drinking in Brothers, I would have never thought like 4-5 years forward we'll be making this episode together.
Yeah.
Sober.
So to all the women, yeah, like yeah, so
Sober
very
episode.
important.
Very, very important distinction to be made over there.
Yeah.
So that's really awesome. And I think that's why we love doing this podcast, because women coming together and talking about anything is so nice. Yeah, it's like a little, I call it my elevated kitty party. So thank you for being part of our kitty party today. Lots and lots of love to you. Have so much fun in Spain, and
Thank you.
we'll see you guys next time.
Awesome.
Like, share,
Bye.
subscribe.